Hey guys, how's it going? Articulation here, and today we're finally looking at the review of my prototype figure. This is Knightfall Bane. I've been working on Bane for about 3 to 4 months, and basically I've just been putting time on the weekends or after work because I work 9 to 5. But I've completed this Bane now and I want to share it with the world. I will also be releasing the STL files before I complete the final version of the Bane because I've proven that it works, everything fits together. I've made some tweaks to make the articulation a little bit better and things to work a little bit better here and there. But for the most part, the design's not going to change. It's going to be like this, and I will basically go through taking a closer look at Bane, and basically I'll tell you all the details I've put in it and everything you can expect when you get the file. Before we go any further with this video, I really wanted to shout out and thank Resione for supplying the resin for this print. So this print is sponsored and brought to you by Resione. There was no monetary exchange. They basically provided me with the resin for the print, and I want to thank them for sponsoring the prototype of Bane, and also when I do the final version, I'll be using the same resin. So thank you Resione for sponsoring the prototype. So similar to the Batman Flashpoint action figure before Bane, this Bane is also printed using the Resione M58 resin as the base resin. So I'm using Resione M58, 85% of Resione M58 and 15% of Ceramic Tenacious to basically give Bane like a little bit of a flexibility to his joints, so it can basically fit onto the other parts. So that's the combination. And for the vest and the trunk section, it's a more flexible kind of mix. So we're using the Resione M58 and Resione F69. The F69, for people that do not know, is a really flexible material, and unfortunately I wasn't able to print the F69 because it is really cold winters in Melbourne at the moment. So the F69 doesn't work too well in winters, so a lot of the prints failed. But if it was summer, I think it would have printed flawlessly. But yeah, basically that's what it would have been like. It would have been a lot more flexible. The material I am currently using is a mix of the F69 and M58, which is still flexible. So that's the mixture here. This was a failed print, but it's still flexible enough for you to be able to do most things. But yeah, I'm still gonna wait for summer and printing the vest piece out again so that it's basically a lot more flexible. So as tradition on this channel, we'll first look at what didn't work and then we'll go into what worked. But basically for this figure, this is not something that didn't work, but basically for this figure, the Resione F69 did not really work, and that's not Resione's fault. It is basically because the cold winters that we're having in Melbourne here, and basically the resin, I was pointing a heater at the 3D printer like the whole printing process, but because the heater was throwing out really warm air, and warm air makes this resin very flexible, it was causing the resin to stretch, and then basically it was sticking to the base plate, or it was sticking to the vat because it was too flexible, too soft. So if it was like ideal temperatures, 25 to 30 degrees, I think it would have worked a lot better. But this is the cleanest print I could get using the F69. And yeah, it's again down to it being winter here. So all the other prints, they failed because of too much, I guess either too much heat or basically just too much suction force because of the nature of the piece. But yeah, I would definitely want to, when summer comes around, reprint this so we can get a flexible vest for Bane. So as an alternative, I tried the Resione F69 and M58 mixture. So this is 50-50 mix. So it's very flexible, you could do anything with it, but this is a print failure. So this basically didn't print correctly. So that's why it's a fail on this side, but this side printed correctly for some reason. But yeah, I just wanted to take this piece and show you like how flexible it is, and it can basically accommodate all the movements you'd want on a Bane. Although it will jump back to its original shape a lot quicker than this one. You might be able to hold Bane's shape if you bend him over. It might be easier for this piece to hold. This will just spring back, so there might be some restrictions in terms of flexibility or posability, but it'll still work. So before printing the belt and the trunks as one piece, I also tried printing it in 2 different pieces. This would have worked, but basically the belt is a little bit too big, and I also did snap it because I was playing with it too much. But this is the M58, which is still very flexible. It's not as flexible as the M58 and F69 mix, but this is the M58 and Tenacious, 85 and 50. 15%, so it's still very flexible, but I was basically playing with it too much and I broke it. But I was trying to go for the belt and trunk being separate pieces. It did work a little bit, but yeah, I basically wasn't sizing the trunks, the belt correctly to the trunks. So I basically merged them into one piece, and that works a lot better because you don't have this constantly floating piece that you need to manage. But yeah, that's one of the other attempts I had. So I did mess up with the hands as well in this figure. I was basically trying to do too much with the wrist pegs. So the wrist peg, it does work, but I still managed to break it because it wasn't consistent enough. So that was one of the issues we ran into. And the other issue is basically the Venom box pipe being too small. So I had to increase the size. I'll show you a little bit later and I'll compare it to this one again. But I basically made that a little bit thicker and basically added a cuff that's a little bit more prominent. Yeah, so I had to redesign the whole wrist peg and it's finally working as I wanted to. Final piece before we look at the action figure, the head sculpt was redone, and not because it was not a good head sculpt. It was basically just a little bit too thin on the neck here. So it was a little bit chippy and it was thin, so it's easier to break. The Venom box was a little bit too small, and I wanted the pipes to be a little bit bigger, so I had to reprint the head and basically customize the Venom box at the back here to be a little bit bigger and the pipes to be a little bit thicker so it doesn't basically come off with the supports. Now with all of that out of the way, we can finally get to the Bane action figure. And if you look up close at the face here, I've tried to mimic as closely as possible the Knightfall Bane comic head look. So before we get into more details, I'll basically just take you through what I've done with the actual head sculpt, why I've changed it. So basically it's that plug here that's been made a little bit bigger. This one was too small and it wouldn't fit a pipe in. And just for people that are curious, this is like a green rubber wristband. I don't know what it's called, a wrist rubber thing that you can buy on eBay. So I basically took one of those, cut it up in half, and then fit it into both parts, and it fits perfectly. So yeah, I've basically made the Venom tubes a little bit thicker as well, so that when you print it and you're peeling off the supports, the Venom tubes don't peel off with the support. The only issue with this head sculpt here is there was a layer shift when I was printing it, so it should look like this when you print the final version. But yeah, be careful, like sometimes the printer does weird things and then there are layer shifts. There are different reasons for layer shifts. I'll not go into that now, but there are ways to avoid it as well, so I'll be trying that in the future. I've given Bane a lot of musculature, especially throughout his neck, to show that he is aggressive, or to show like a lot of venom, like a lot of nerves and veins basically popping, for him to look more, like muscular and aggressive, I guess, right? I sculpted on like a pretty huge chest. There's a good cut here to give him more articulation. There's good musculature going on everywhere, so I've basically added muscles where I can. And also, that's popped out, so because I tilted the head back earlier on, so it'll just fit in. And if you want, you can glue it in definitely, but yeah, I'll leave it out for now. But I've basically made the muscles big and make it work as much as possible. We'll go through the articulation later on. And if you remember me talking about the Venom box change here, it's basically just that piece here. So this piece here, I made it a little bit bigger so that the Venom box would stand out a little bit more. The pipe fits, and I've made it a little bit bigger in terms of wider as well, so it's not as thin as before. So it does definitely work. It looks like a really cool Venom box. If you paint it, I think the Venom box is supposed to be white with silver tubes going out of it, so if you paint it, it'll look pretty cool. With the wrist, so I've left the old version of the wrist on the left of our screen, right of Bane here, and this is the new version of the wrist. So the new version of the wrist basically just allows for a little bit more clearance, so there's more movement possible. The old version of the wrist would run into basically the top part pretty quickly, so I had to change that a little bit. And also because it was stuck so deep within the forearm, it was breaking as well, so I had to move to this kind of version so that it moves more freely and it doesn't break on you. And yeah, because I was trying out a lot of prototypes and printing a lot of parts, it was easy for me to find and fix, so it was good. and you guys don't have to worry about the issue. The Bane chest, the vest, I also did like a very quick, very rough cloth version of it, but I still stuck to this one because not many people want to like sew clothing. And also, if you make the cut as deep as that one here, this will not, basically it will not have enough fabric to be like hold its integrity. Basically that's what I was trying to say. It won't have enough fabric to hold its integrity, so it's gonna be a lot more difficult to control. So being 3D printed, this one stays on a little bit better. It is flexible enough to allow for some articulation, but if you're printing in the F69, which I have here, it should be a little bit better still, and it still keeps all its details. So if you could see here, there's like a groove line, everything like that. So it should still keep all its detail, but it'll just be a lot more flexible. I will try definitely in the summer, but for now I'm happy with what I have now. The trunks, I made it one piece now rather than having the trunk and the belt separate. So it should be a lot easier to move around, and you won't have a floaty piece that you need to constantly bring back to its place. It will just always be there, and there's no articulation loss because of it. So yeah, it's pretty good. With the thighs, I've given him a little bit of a wrinkle here and there, and I've given him some boot texture here. So, some pant texture here. So if you paint this black and then dry brush a little bit of silver on it or white on it, it should look like actual jeans, which is pretty cool. Some wrinkles in the knee as well. The top of the bottom of the leg has a little bit of wrinkles, just to suggest that Bane has tucked his pants into his boots. And yeah, speaking of boots, that's the part that I spent the most time on. So there's, if you can see the details here, there's a lot of tiny stitch lines. I've added some leather texturing to it as well, but it's not as visible because I was printing on a higher layer height. So I was printing 0.05 layer height, but if you do 0.03 or 0.04, you should be able to see a little bit more of the actual texture that I put on it. But it's basically just, it looks more like leather. Yeah, the boots, or the actual shoe part of the boots, yeah, they're modeled to be similar to a Timberland. It's not exactly a Timberland, but basically gives you a little bit of a combat boot kind of feel. Especially with the Timberland boots that are really popular, I thought that would be a good idea to make it similar to that. So it has some character at the bottom. It'll definitely leave footprints if you put it on sand or something like that. So you could do something really cool with that. It doesn't look bad. It basically adds to the realism of the figure, so I'm really happy with that. And yeah, that's basically the figure. Let's look at him from the back. Like, not much going on for the boots, it's just some extra details. The musculature is there like under the vest, but because the vest covers so much of his back, you can't really see it. And I've tried to make the vest as accurate as possible to the comics, because I was looking at a lot of references from the comics. I basically ended up reading Batman Knightfall again, and it was very fun because I was trying to gather material for this. So it was really fun getting into that whole comic again, and yeah, it was definitely very interesting. Moving on to the articulation, I will try to show you as much as possible, but some joints may be a little bit stiffer, and basically because this part is not plugged in, it will definitely come off, so I'll just take it off for now. So that's basically what it looks like. I'll just take it off for now. And the head can go up that much. There's no neck articulation because I wanted to keep it like intact. For some reason, it just worked out better in my mind to keep the neck and the body intact, to add all the musculature around the neck. So it can look up that much, which is pretty decent, I guess. It can look down that much. So it's a dumbbell joint under the neck, so you can basically give it like a back and forth tilt as well. It can go side to side pretty easily, no issues there. And yeah, it'll basically do pretty much anything you want a double joint to do. So in the final version, the shoulder butterfly thing here is a little bit longer, so it covers a little bit more off the shoulder, but it's a little bit sunken in at the moment. But the shoulders can go up about that much. I think it should go up a little bit further. Yeah, it should go up a little bit further. The shoulders should go up about that much, which is, I guess, pretty decent. The biceps can do a full 360. which is pretty cool. There's a little bit of a scuffing here because I was too impatient and I was basically just trying to articulate it as soon as I got it out of the print, which is always a bad idea. Always cure before you start moving things. The biceps, they are, well, it's not the best. I think I could do better, but then I didn't want to, you know, sacrifice too much of the visuals and the aesthetics. So that's what the biceps can do, I think. Yeah, it's a little bit less than 90, which hopefully I can fix for the final production run. But yeah, I'm not planning to change it at this point in time because it just really works with the aesthetic for now. And I'm also moving on to other figures, so I don't want to spend too much time on Bane for the time being. But that's what the elbows can do. So it's for both elbows. The wrists can basically do everything you'd want a wrist to do. It will go all the way around. It will pivot back and forth, and you can configure it to also go in and out. The upper body can crunch forward and back, but it's a little bit hindered because of the rubber piece or the flexible resin piece. The lower body can go that far forward and that far back, so there's no hindrance there. He can tilt side to side as well, no issues there. The legs, if I take the hands out of the way, legs can basically kick out that much. So if it was summer, this would be a little bit more flexible, and I could basically tweak it just a little bit more, kick out a little bit more, but that's what I can do with it so far. There was a problem with the knees where the knees or the back of the legs ran into each other, and this is because of a miscalculation on my part. I'll fix it for the final version, so it should basically not collide with each other and it will go all the way through, but that's what the legs can do. And the ankles are on a double joint as well, so you get a lot of tilting action. You can basically, yeah, there's a lot of flexibility and you can pose them the way you want basically, so no issues there. You can go forward that much, back that much, and then side to side, rotate, pivot, everything you'd want. Last thing we want to do before we sign off is compare this Bane next to some other action figures. This Bane was created for the Mafex 6-inch line in particular. So was the Batman Flashpoint on the left there. So that's the finished version of my Flashpoint Batman on the left. This Bane is a lot taller, a lot bigger, lot more muscular. And if you look at the Dark Knight Returns Batman on the right, it's similar in terms of basically the width and the muscles and the girth, but a lot taller because Bane in the comics is shown to be a lot taller when he's jacked up on Venom. So yeah, I think the scale works well. I did ask on Instagram if people were happy with the scale, and most people voted yes, so that's why I stuck with the scale. But yeah, Knightfall Bane looks pretty cool next to the other figures, and I think he scales well. He's a lot bigger, and I'd expect Bane to be a lot bigger. So here we have Bane next to, on the left, the Mafex Hush Batman, blue version, and on the right, the Mattel Multiverse Dick Grayson Batman from the Killer Croc wave. So yeah, Bane I think scales well with all 6.5 inch lines. So next we've got on the left the custom Mezco style Bane that I've created. So cloth goods, I hand sewed like the pants and the vest, and it's basically a Hercules body, Marvel Legends Hercules body, with Crossbones boots and Crossbones head made to look like Bane's because I painted on top of it. And on the right we've got the Mezco Supreme Knight Batman. And next, for our final comparison, we're looking at Marvel Legends Thanos on the left, and on the right, the 7-inch DC McFarlane Multiverse action figure, Black Suit Superman, which I think he looks like he's only taken a small dose of Venom, I guess, but it could still work with the McFarlane line. But I think because I've designed this specifically to work with the Mafex and the 6-inch kind of line, it's more suited to that kind of action figures. This Bane action figure is available to purchase now only on Cuts 3D, so you can basically check the links down in my description and you can get a link to this Bane. You can also, if you want, go there and buy some of my other 3D printable sculpts. So there's a Batman action figure, there's a Batman head, Dark Knight Returns Batman armored head, and a Dark Knight Returns Superman head. If you're interested, you can have a look at those as well. But Basically, this Bane is available for you to try out. I have not added any additional accessories like extra hands and stuff like that just as yet, but once we get closer to like the final version where I'm showing you like the showcase of the printed and painted version, we'll get there and I'll release some additional hands as well. Before we sign off, once again, thank you so much Resione for sponsoring this prototype build, as well as the final version of the build that I'm going to paint later on. But thank you so much for sponsoring me with the resin. And even if Resione was not sponsoring the resin, they are the resin that I would definitely recommend, because it works so well with action figures, and in this scenario that's the best resin you can buy, because it doesn't create a powder when it grinds up on itself. So when resin is touching on resin, if you try any other resin, it's going to create like a powdery kind of thing. But with the M58, there is no powdering. It allows for all this articulation to happen without powdering. You're not inhaling any of the bad stuff. So thank you so much Resione for sponsoring this print. And thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this showcase, and if you really want to purchase Batman and Bane and help the channel out, you can do so on Cults 3D. The links are down in the description.